What up, sports fans? Waxon Wednesday, Jake Waxman, top level, let two guys talk sports. Let's go. All right, I'll cut right to the chase. Entire focus is on hockey, starting with, oh goodness, oh dear Toronto. More heartbreak for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and against that big bad team from Boston, the Bruins, of course. I watched that series, and folks, I won't lie to you. I thought Toronto was going to win in that first. I will say, my initial thought was, okay, Boston's going to win in 7 yet again. But in that game 7, I really thought that Toronto was going to win. Boy, was I wrong, of course. But I thought, even when it went tied into overtime, I thought, okay, I got a feeling Toronto's going to pull this one out. I think they're going to defy all expectations. Eventually, hey, got to get over that hump somehow. Right? Well, still, you think of so much going through my mind. That Pastrnak goal was a thing of beauty, of course. What a pass! The guy who passed that puck to Pastrnak, that was some pass, right through the Leafs' defense, and Pastrnak took advantage from there. So, some people say it's the hockey gods hating on Toronto, but the Leafs, for one reason or another, they can't beat Boston, and you know what? They just can't put together a deep run in the NHL postseason. When you think all things considered. So now if you're the Leafs, where do you go from here? You got players like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, and a lot of other good pieces on this team. Yet only one playoff series win as a unit. And of course that was not this postseason, but the one before it, of course. And now there's talk about Toronto potentially blowing it up. Like, they're looking at, from what I've heard, they're looking at trading Mitch Marner and a few other pieces. Of course, there's a couple other. Now, if I'm Toronto, you got to keep Austin Matthews, okay? I know he was hurt for most of the series, but you got to keep him. He is still a star piece and the key piece to this Toronto Maple Leafs team. But all roster moves and all that. Where do you go from here if you're Toronto? This is an answer. Honestly, I don't have an answer to this question. What do you do? I mean, do you just blow it up and start all over again? Do you I mean, they're not in cap hell from what I understand. So, and if they trade a guy like Marner, who's a good player, but that would help Toronto maybe get a few other excellent pieces to build a cup contending teams. I think with Toronto, it's just more than one thing. But sometimes I just can't quite put my finger on what it is that's wrong with this Maple Leafs team. They have a good core. They've been getting to the playoffs almost every year since Austin Matthews showed up. Yet they just can't, for one reason or another, they just have not been able to show that fight in the playoff. And when they get close in the 7-game series, they just can't find a way to get over that hump. I mean, it's tough, and I feel bad for Maple Leafs fans, okay? This is a team, one of the most successful teams in NHL history. They've got those 13 Stanley Cups, but none since 1967. It's been a long time coming. I just feel so bad for Leafs fans. They still very loyal to the team, but each and every year it gets harder and harder to watch this Maple Leafs team. And we're all just left wondering, where do they go from here? And like I said, I just don't have an answer for that question. What do you do? I feel like whether they blow it up or just stay the course, no matter what they do, it's almost as if this franchise is cursed or something. I mean, you could say that, but, I just think, they've had problems on defense, of course, in the time that Austin Matthews has been there. So I think if you do decide to kind of rebuild a bit, build up a stronger defense. And I think that'll help the Maple Leafs out a lot. That's one thing I think they do need to change, is build stronger on defense. Goaltending's not bad. Goaltending's very good for Toronto, but they need defense. They've struggled with that throughout the years. So That's the one thing I would do, whether it's a rebuild or staying the course. Just, okay, address your defense. But aside from that, tumultuous times for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And trust me, we all want to. A lot of people want to laugh at them because they blow it every year, and the memes live on, as my man Tyler said. But honestly, I'm one of the guys that just feels bad for them because it seems like no matter what the Leafs do, they just can't get back to the promised land, and just cannot beat Boston. We'll see where they go from here. But Toronto. All right, moving on. So that's just my thoughts on the Maple Leafs falling in yet another Game 7 to the Bruins. Now for my next subject. All right, so it's round 2. Round 2 of the playoffs now. So I'll give you guys my early thoughts there. So I watched the Stars and the Avalanche, and oh man, Dallas might have been a bit tired from the 7-game series between them and the Vegas Golden Knights, because they came out guns a-blazing against the Avalanche in Game 1. 3-0 up early. And next 2 periods, the Avalanche tie up the game and we go to overtime. And the Avalanche win in overtime. So I still think, that's going to be a great series. I think that's going to be a 7-game series. So another rough start for the Stars. So of course, they were able to overcome the odds against Vegas, but Colorado they're a juggernaut. So Dallas cannot afford to pretty much let their shoes get tangled up again, or they cannot afford to be caught snoozing again in their next home game or Game 2. They got to win the second game, or who knows how this series will go between them and the Avalanche. I think it's going to be a 7-game series. I'm really curious to see how this series against the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers go. These are 2 great teams. The Canucks, they suddenly are now looking like they are starting to build a contender there in Vancouver, it appears. They got some good pieces there. Won a playoff series for the first time in a long time, and now they get to show how much more they can be against a very, very good Edmonton Oilers team led by Connor McDavid. Sorry if I sputtered, Edmonton Oilers. So I'm curious to see how that series goes. Now, I think the Oilers might just be a bit too much for Vancouver, but you never know. Canucks could put up a really good fight. It's a very underrated. They look like a very underrated team right now with the way they're playing. So that's a series I'm looking forward to watching and keeping an eye on. Boston versus Florida. You got the rematch between the Panthers and the Bruins. Bruins looking to exercise some demons from last season against this Panthers team. They're up 3-0 or 3-1 at one point, and lost the remaining games. And then Game 7, they lost to the Panthers last season. So the Bruins, there's some fire in them. And we'll see how this game 2 between them and the Panthers go. But I think the Bruins they look good right now. I will say this: they are playing with some fire. And Brad Marchand, he's determined to lead this Bruins team back to the promised land. And also, another series that I think is going to be really, really great. This New York Rangers and Carolina Hurricanes series. You got the Rangers, who have all the pieces to make a cup run. And you got Carolina, whose window may be closing. Or their Stanley Cup window may be closing. And this may be one of their last chances, if not their very last chance to get a Stanley Cup. So they got to do so. Of course, the series right now is 2-0 in favor of the New York Rangers. They've won both games, and it both very close. I will say this: so far, despite the Rangers winning both of those games, the Carolina Hurricanes, they look good. They're playing very, very good hockey right now. So I think this series is going to be another 7-game series. And so Carolina, they're doing just about everything right. The one thing I will say is they've had 10 power plays. And in terms of power play goals, 0 for 10. They have 0 power play goals. I know it's only 2 games, but when you have 10 power plays in just 2 games, you got to figure out how to capitalize there. So, going forward, if the Hurricanes are going to have a chance to make this a 7-game, if they really want to make this a 7-game series and move further on in the playoffs, got to start capitalizing on your power plays. Because there have been times where they've had some good looks against this Rangers defense, and they've had them where they want him. But it just seems like on the power plays, Carolina has been struggling. They just can't really find the back of the net around Shesterkin, who is a fantastic goalie. I tell you what, the more I watch Igor Shesterkin play net keeper for the or net finder for the New York Rangers, the more impressed I am with him. Without a doubt, he's one of the best goalies, top 3 in my mind of goalies in the NHL as of right now. The guy is playing out of his mind. He's laser focused. And that's another thing. This series is very close because of Carolina's tenacity, but also New York is up 2-0 in the series because Igor Shesterkin is playing some of his best hockey at the right time. He's always played great hockey, but right now he is sharp as iron. And he's laser focused, and you know what? As long as he doesn't allow more than 3 goals, Rangers have a great chance to keep going in this postseason. Another goalie that I'm also keeping my eye on is Steve Ottinger of the Dallas Stars. He's playing some tremendous hockey as well. And honestly, one of the most underrated goalies in the NHL, if not the most underrated goalie. So these are just some of my thoughts right now from the early start to the second round of the postseason. On one final note before I move on to my final subject, is it just me, or is anyone else bothered by the fact that the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs started even before the NHL had its last Game 7 of the first round? Okay, that blows my mind a bit. Like, really, NHL? Could you please be more patient and just finish off the first round before you dive into the second? I know the first game was between the Rangers and the Hurricanes, but if I was the commissioner of the NHL, I would not even be, like, if the first round's not over, I would be saying, no, let's push back this second round and let's finish the first round first. All right? It bothers me a little bit. Like, that tells me the NHL has had a bit of a scheduling problem so far in this postseason, and that's not working well for them. That's not boding well for them. So, but going forward, the NHL needs to be more patient and needs to finish up the current series before we move on to the next series. So that's just my thoughts on that. I thought that was just really odd that they were already starting the second series before the first round of the playoffs was completed. Just what in the world? So, okay. So, while I can't say I watched the NHL draft lottery, I can give you guys my thoughts on it. I'm kind of glad I didn't, of course, because from what I heard, ESPN leaked what was going to be the draft order. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm refused to comment. I've only heard, but... Well, I will admit, I did hope my Blackhawks would get the first round pick, would get that for the second year. I hoped for the second year in a row, the Blackhawks would get the number 1 pick for the second year in a row. Yep, I was greedy. You can say that about me. I was hoping for it, and hoping that they would get the right to draft Macklin Celebrini number 1 overall. But that's not going to happen. The Blackhawks, they're going to get the number 2 pick. And you know what? That's good with me. I'm a little bummed about not getting number 1, but hey, there's plenty of talent coming up. Plenty of talent in this upcoming NHL draft that the Blackhawks can choose from. And I will also say congrats to the San Jose Sharks. They earned the right to get the number 1 pick, all right? They deserve it. Hey, Sharks fans, I know it was a rough season, but at least you got something to celebrate, and I'm sure they were happy to take those losses to the Blackhawks because that meant they got the number 1 pick. And they're going to get Macklin. Without a doubt, they're probably going to get Macklin Celebrini. Draft him at number 1. Now, if they don't, that would shock me. Like, you got to take him, right? You need a center like that. And of course, and I do like my Macklin Celebrini, great player. but the Blackhawks, I will say, as much as I would have liked that number 1 pick to get Macklin Celebrini, the Blackhawks do have bigger needs elsewhere. Like, they've already got a couple centers. You got Connor Bedard. Sure, he needs to improve on the faceoffs, but hey, a lot of rookies struggle there. But you also they also drafted another center in the previous draft by the name of Oliver Moore, who will be ready to play this upcoming season. So think having him will help at the center position. So I don't think the Blackhawks really need to go center in this first round of the draft. They got plenty of picks, but if I'm on the Blackhawks, whew. So this is just my thoughts on the lottery. But if I'm the Blackhawks, I'm either going defense at number 2 or either right or wing at number 2. Either defense or wing at number 2. And there's talented players available on both of those sides. I'm not going to get too much into who I would like to see the Blackhawks draft it. I'm going to do a little more research on that before I really come to a conclusion on that. But I do want them. Yeah, right now my mind says, I'm thinking defense, but I would not hate it if the Blackhawks got a winger at number 2, especially if there's a really talented piece. So that's just my thoughts there. Hey, congrats to the San Jose Sharks on winning the Macklin Celebrini sweepstakes. So here's what I do know. Top 3 in the NHL draft are San Jose, Chicago, and Anaheim. That's who's got the top 3 picks. I think Columbus is picking at number 5, and I don't remember the rest of the order, but I think Detroit is either picking at number 11 or 12. So for you Red Wings fans, of course. So that's about what I know in terms of the draft lottery, and these are just some of my thoughts. So I just hope the Blackhawks take right for now. Okay, we're not going to get Macklin Celebrini, and you know what? That's okay. The Blackhawks, they got bigger needs than center in this upcoming draft. So we'll see what they do with it. And I hope whatever the Blackhawks decide to do a number 2, I hope they get the best player possible. That is my biggest thought. And this is some of my thoughts right now on the draft. Again, I didn't watch, and you know what? I'm glad I didn't. Not because I thought it was rigged, but just because, okay, it's a lottery. We're drawing a bunch of those number balls to decide who gets the first pick. It's confusing, and it is what it is. It's not the most exciting thing. And honestly, I just look forward to the offseason and seeing what the Blackhawks do to build up their team in the offseason. So, just my thoughts on the NHL draft lottery. All right, on to this day in sports history. And on this day, the 8th of May, 1973, Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub as we know him, fills in for Cubs manager Whitey Lockman, who is ejected during the game, technically becoming baseball's first African-American manager on a technicality. So, that's right, Ernie Banks technically was the first African-American base MLB manager. He played shortstop as a player, but he technically, at one point in 1973, became the first African-American MLB manager because the guy who was the manager for the Cubs got ejected in one game, so he had to fill in. Intriguing stuff. All right, sports fans, that's all I got for this week's Waxon Wednesday. Thank you for watching, and this is Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports, signing off.